Hello or bonjour. Welcome back to Life on the French, this month French themed. So today I wanted to do a very brief history about ballet as it pertains to France. As someone who used to do ballet, I was a little bit interested in this topic and I was considering doing a ballet exercise thing, but there are way too many traumatic memories for me to do that to myself, so I'm not doing it. Instead, I'm going to tell you about the fascinating history of French ballet, or just ballet in general, but as you'll see, most of it takes place in France. So the origins of ballet are interesting. We wouldn't call it ballet. If we look back to where it comes from, we would not consider it ballet. But ballet at the time can be traced back to the 1600s in the courts of Italy. And the courts would dance and it became this thing, upper class people dance type thing. And it wasn't super professional. But how does it get to France, where it makes its debut? Well, Henry marries, and I forget the number, but Henry the something marries French courtess. They get married, they go to France, and they bring ballet with them to the courts. So again, staying in the courts, but it seems like it's still kind of choreographed, because they bring in some professional dancers but usually they're there for comedic relief or a grotesque movement or something. But it's still within the courts. And in fact, the kings sometimes would participate in ballet, like Louis XIV. Louis XIV liked ballet so much that he established 2 ballet academies. These are critical to the survival of ballet today. One of them, I should say. But he establishes 2. Because eventually, like all things, ballet falls out of popularity with the court. These ballet academies are what preserves ballet as an art form. Now, one of these academies, the academy that counts, is the Academy of Music, I think is how you would say it in English. And it is not just for ballet, it's for ballet and opera. And this is where you see the connection between ballet and opera like this. Their relationship is super interesting. So ballet and opera become inseparable for now. Opera isn't opera without dance at this time. And ballet is dance. So ballet becomes the dance that goes with operas. And so the ballet company becomes called the Paris Opera. And that's going to get really confusing later on. But they become the Paris Opera. And they, again, they're not really narratives at this point. They're themes of things. So it could be a theme of sadness, a theme of
joy,
yeah, humor. This was especially true back in the courts. Eventually, we begin to see the rise of the narrative in ballets, and that's kind of what takes hold. There are 2 ballets that do accomplish this task. Neither one of them are around anymore, but it's the Sith is the English translation, I think. The Sith?
the Sith, the dark side of the Force.
I don't know. Listen, ballet had to make its way in the world. It had to survive a lot. but you get to see like this narrative develop. Now, what do I mean by it has to survive? So, remember how it's kind of tied to the courts? Like, yeah, the courts don't do it anymore, and now it's like this ballet opera, and the public is starting to like appreciate ballet operas, and it's getting like popularity with the general public, not the courts. The courts are still like largely funding these institutions up until the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution sends all art forms, almost all art forms, into complete upheaval because their funding is gone and they don't know what to do and we're lost. You know who stays around? Ballet operas. Ballet operas maintain their popularity after the French Revolution because they were already kind of popular by the general public and already accessible to them to an extent. So they continue to thrive. So France is like clearly now the epicenter of ballet. Other like European cities are like starting to like have ballet, and we're gonna get to that in a second. But ballet has to survive in France another upheaval, which is the defeat of Napoleon. After the defeat of Napoleon, not only does ballet maintain its popularity, it grows in popularity because there's a growing wealthy middle class that wants to go see ballets because they're seen as still prestigious. I think probably stemming from the fact that they used to be from the courts. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. So, Paris sees this like blossoming of like dance, ballet, whatever. Meanwhile, over in London, 1717, they're experimenting with ballet because they have to be different from Paris if they're gonna like make an impact on the world, right? Because Paris is doing like the best in ballet. So they start this idea of Ballet de Action, which is basically what we would consider ballet now. Mimed ballet, right? So ballet without the opera. After Napoleon, this separation happens. Ballet becomes popular in and of itself. And you lose, it grows in popularity after Napoleon's defeat at the expense of opera. So what was once like this is now like this, and this one is fading. It's just this. So now we have what's considered like the golden age of ballet, which is like 1830s through 1850s, where you're getting like famous dancers, famous choreographers. You know, they're all the talk. And again, France becomes the epicenter of ballet, right? And even though the style of mimed ballet started over in London, Paris had picked it up at about the same time as London, just not the Paris Opera, the ballet company, not an opera. Other ballet companies in Paris had started to do mimed ballet back in 1717 as well, but it wasn't until the Paris Opera basically accepted that form of dance that it became ballet, the style of ballet. Ballet is now mimed. And it remains mimed to this day. So it's kind of the beginning of the start of modern ballet. You can either count it as 1717 in Paris and London and other experimental stuff, but formalized by the Paris Opera in like the 1770s. So with all this golden age ballet stuff happening in France, why don't we know that many French ballets? Well, I guess the stories weren't that great. At least not in comparison to Russia. So, as I said, ballet had become popularized across Europe, and Russia was no exception. The Tsar liked ballet so much that he formed the Imperial Russian Ballet, or the Russian Imperial Ballet. I don't know. One of those two. And he really cared about technique. So at this point, the other thing that we consider part of modern ballet that came into existence are point shoes. So you're dancing on your toes. So this is what like is defining the technique of ballet and dance, and the style of dance. So the French have their own style, right, of on point dancing, and it's on point like en point. And Russia is like, the Tsar specifically is like, I have money, I want to do this. So the Tsar just throws money, creates this ballet, and wants his own, the Russian technique of ballet. And the Russian technique of ballet basically combines the best of both worlds from French style and Italian style of ballet to create the Russian style of ballet. Why does this matter? It matters because this is the style of ballet I think that is closest to what we see today in America and across the globe. It becomes very influential. But it's still taken large influence from France. And in Russia, ballet is still, at the beginning, seen as imported from Western Europe. It's not making any claims to be, like, starting in Russia. But it does become very, very popular, and the epicenter of ballet moves to St. Petersburg. And it's from Russia that you see the major ballet themes, or ballets, today. They were choreographed and composed in Russia. Now, the big three are the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, and the Sleeping Beauty. That's not the order they came out in, but those are the big three. And you can still see those performed to Tchaikovsky today. And that's from like the 1700s. That's kind of crazy that ballet has had that much consistency over this long of a time. And what's interesting is we don't see, so these are like, again, talking about narratives. I think the reason that these lasted is these have narratives. They're a little bit hard to follow, granted, in mime form, but there's a story arc to these ballets. And the earlier, like, when Russia first started ballet, they tried to do like Russian themes. I'm pretty sure, well, I don't remember exactly the name of the ballet, and I don't want to get it wrong. But they had like one that was like kind of successful, but Russian themes were not popular because, again, it was seen as imported from Western Europe. So these ballets took their stories from France. So even though they're performed by Russians, choreographed by Russians, and basically composed by Russians, they're French stories. It's meant to be French. And as I said, as destiny would have it, a branch of the Russian Imperial Ballet goes to France to perform and stays there and eventually breaks off from the Russian ballet entirely and forms the French style of ballet that you see now. kind of wraps up what I would say the history of ballet. So, I mean, there's lots more to discuss. If you want to know more, I really suggest reading the article in the description down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of our content, this month it's all French themed, but it's across a variety of different things, and they're not all lectures, I promise. Click subscribe and ding the bell button to know when we post, but we post every day. Au revoir!